Hey guys, it's Kristen here over in Denmark. It's great to be talking to you first of all, and I hope you guys are enjoying the pod so far with Miranda at Real Baby Bird and Kate and Chris as usual. But you know what hearing my voice means. It means we went extra long, and that means we get to split this episode into two episodes. This was supposed to be one episode of Leia, Princess of Alderaan by Claudia Gray. We were supposed to be wrapping up that book today, but we will be wrapping up that book today, part one, and then next week you will get part two. So this is Book Wars Pod, episode 79. But I miss you guys. I'll talk to you guys soon. Please enjoy.
Hello and welcome to episode 79 of the Book Wars Pod. Today we are wrapping up Leia, Princess of Alderaan. I'm Miranda, here with Kate and Chris. How are you guys doing tonight?
Oh, you did so well, yay!
Oh, thank you. Baby's
Nailed it.
first time.
It was, that was great. That was perfect.
Nailed it. Nobody would have noticed that it was your first time except for the fact that now we're here making a big deal out of it. So
I mean, also, I've never done it before, so if longtime listeners of the pod noticed that it was me, I think they'd kind of put two and two together pretty quickly.
I don't know. You were the one who just now was just like, I have listened to over 1 million episodes of this podcast, and I don't know what to say.
But, you know, I did not come out to be attacked right now.
Miranda's been like parenting us to get to finally fucking recording the podcast because Chris and I are in a fucking tizzy because of fuck shit that is going on.
just life. We don't need to talk about it.
No, I'm just very briefly gonna be like fuck shit that is going on that we are not going to discuss right now because oh my god. But if you know what it is, then you know what it is. Anyway, we were talking about my rum.
Yeah, you've
Yeah,
got
what do
like
you guys-
a cocktail worth of rum, like an entire cocktail with just rum.
How
What?
much is a cocktail worth of rum?
I don't
It's-
really know.
That is just under half of a
It's like 2 fingers.
low glass.
It's 2 fingers.
That's like a normal drink.
Entirely of rum?
I mean, I don't drink rum. I would drink that of whiskey, but yeah.
Yeah, fuck you, Chris.
Didn't you
I
drink
have
that
what I
like
would
with
consider
tequila
to be-
2 weeks ago?
Yes.
She has more rum than I had tequila,
That
I'm
is
confident.
completely false.
I really?
Yeah.
I don't think that's true.
Well,
I have this much whiskey and I might get more, so.
So, then don't at me, sir.
Yeah, this is it's a little better with water.
What do you... Chris... Well,
So I'm
okay.
drinking Sazerac rye, which I think I've mentioned on the pod before. Is not my favorite because it's just the mash bill is just 51% rye, so the minimum legal level for it to be called rye,
Oh.
and the rest is corn, which I am not the biggest fan of bourbon, only because it's a little bit sweet for me. Like it can be a little bit cloying. There are bourbons that I love, but in general, it's not my fave. And so this is a very bourbony rye. However, I added a little water to it, and it's a little better. The spiciness is coming out a little bit,
Okay.
which is what I like in rye. Which it's impossible to find rye that's like that because I'm apparently a fucking freak, and nobody actually likes that in rye. Everybody's
How do
like,
you
drink a
not find
smooth
a-
rye.
How do you not find a rye that's spicy? Isn't that like the whole shit?
I know. Like, I swear, like, anytime I'm, like, looking for, like, new ryes, they're, like, really smooth. Like, kind of like a bourbon. I'm like, if I wanted a bourbon, I would drink a
Oh
bourbon.
my god.
Can you direct me to those ryes? Because I don't usually like them, but I love bourbon.
Oh, interesting. Okay, well, you might like Sazerac rye, matter
Great.
of fact.
Chris is like every single rise like that. Which I know is not true, but...
You know what? It made me really mad because I found a rye that I fucking loved, and it's called Templeton Rye. And their whole thing was like,
yeah.
oh, it's like this like super old recipe, blah, 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 blah. And then it comes out that A, it's like not even theirs. They just straight up buy the rye from another distillery, which, whatever. Like, other places do that. They're more honest about it, but like other places do that and just mix it themselves. Except then it comes out that they don't just mix it. They take the rye from, I want to say it's Buffalo Trace, and flavor it.
Pretty sure that's
Like
true.
they don't mix it with another whiskey. They put like flavoring in it to make it taste the way they want, which makes me angry.
It's weird.
Yeah, that's a no for me, dog.
Yeah, and it was really good too. So like I was like my go-to rye, but now I'm like, well, gotta find a new one now.
It's like when you buy juice and it's just like none of this is actually real juice. It's like 20% juice.
Yeah, that bitch was from concentrate.
Oh my god. That's amazing.
Anyway, if our listeners have any recommendations for a good rye on the spicier side, hit me up because I'm looking.
Or any good bourbon, because, you know,
Or
who
good
doesn't
bourbon.
love- who doesn't
I
love
like
whiskey?
bourbon. Yeah, I like all whiskey. Bourbon's just like sometimes they can be a little like cloying and sweet for me. Is my only problem with them. But I have a bourbon here that I love that I was considering drinking tonight, which is from 1-8 Distilling in DC. So
Hey.
basically, any whiskey recommendations, hit me up.
Yeah, no, you just want your alcohol to kick you in the nuts. So, yeah. Speaking of kicking people in the nuts, I don't have any actually. Anyway, but I am drinking a shit ton of rum. I'm sorry.
It's
I'm
a
like
weird transition.
really cracked out right now. It is fine. I can't talk today. It was a snow day. My brain's not online. It's gonna be fine. I am drinking a Smith & Cross rum because it's a rum day for me. It's a lot of rum. We're gonna see how this goes. I have not really, honestly, a whole lot to say about rum. You just went a whole spiel about your rye, and I'm like, I have rum.
I need to learn more about. I've talked about this on the pod. I feel like before, but I really want to learn more about rum and like because there's basically no fucking rules to it.
Right.
Is my understanding,
Right.
and like basically anything that you distill from sugar of any kind can be called rum. And so like rums from all the different Latin American countries all taste different because they're all like distilled differently. And I just want to learn more about that because it
It's
sounds
wild.
fascinating to me.
It's wild, but also very cool.
Yeah. After like whiskey, which is like fucking regulated at the government level, and tequila, which is a much narrower definition than people think it is.
Mm-hmm. So
Rum is just the opposite.
Miranda's just like, sure. What do you have,
I mean,
Miranda?
I'm drinking wine tonight.
Ooh.
It is a Pinot Noir. It's an Oregon wine. I don't know anything else about it. I got it on sale at the grocery store, so that's why I picked it.
That sounds perfect.
But the sale price was like $15. So I was like, this seems like it'd be a good wine.
There you go.
It's
Haha.
tasty. Tastes like grapes.
Thank you, Miranda. It's beautiful. So beautiful.
It's grape notes to it.
Oh my fucking
Yeah.
god. That's amazing. Oh, Jesus. Speaking of wine, because Alderaan loves it, shall we talk about
And now there's none left.
Oh my god. Yeah, we're gonna...
No, there is still wine from Alderaan left in the galaxy.
It's just, like,
It's just harder to find.
2 bottles of it.
You will not find it on sale at your grocery store.
That is accurate. Yes. Very, very true. I'm gonna need, like... I'm just gonna say, I'm gonna need, like, more alcohol to, like, get through this sad fucking episode where it's just, like... You just...
I know, already going into this in a good frame of mind.
I know, crying about it. Oh, you know what would help if I switched the tab on my computer to the outline so we could discuss things?
Yes,
All
that
right.
would help.
So the first thing I wanted to talk about... Oh god, this is gonna be such a weird episode. Sorry in advance, everybody. The first thing I wanted to talk about, is this concept of destiny and Leia being able to choose her own destiny. This is kind of a carryover conversation from our first episode where we were talking about how much choice does she have, and of course it kind of plays into talking about destiny because of course the Force is involved and all this crazy shit happens. So I'm just kind of wondering, like, you know, Leia is at the end of the book as the Crown Princess of Alderaan. She thinks she has her future set out before her. She thinks she's going to be queen. She's going to rule over the planet one day. She thinks she knows what the rest of her life is gonna look like. And then Alderaan gets blown the fuck up. So, where does that come into play in terms of, like, how Leia frames her destiny, I guess, and, like, how she, I don't know, starts reimagining how things are gonna be. We don't get a lot of it in the original trilogy because men wrote it, but...
Yeah.
You know.
I mean, I think... And this is, like, kind of going back to the argument that I was making that y'all didn't necessarily agree with in our first episode. Like, to me, Leia is very much the master of her own destiny. Like, you know, you look at all the choices she makes compared to... I think we specifically compared her to Obi-Wan, who we've kind of determined is kind of a soldier of fate. Like, he just does what circumstance demands of him and doesn't really have a choice. To me, Leia, like, I don't know. I'm not positive that I have it, like, completely delineated in my mind of, like, what the difference between them is. But to me, Obi-Wan's duties and lack of choices are built out of actual structural things. Like, he had to become a Jedi because he was, you know, raised by the Jedi. And he had to train Anakin because his master made him promise on his fucking deathbed. Like, that's not a choice. And, like, you know, then he had to go to war, and then he had to, you know, go into exile, because if he didn't, then, you know, the galaxy would perish because there would be no one left. And, like, all these things that he, like, didn't really choose to do. Like, he had to do them because there was not a realistic alternative.
Right, like, I feel like he's made one actual choice in his life when he was probably, like, fucking 18 and trying to protect Satine on Mandalore, and had to decide whether he was gonna fuck off with her or not. And he stayed on the straight and narrow because fucking Obi-Wan.
And we'll see if we get any of this in Master and Apprentice, but, like...
Speaking of Claudia Gray.
from what, you know, looking back at Clone Wars, like, he talks to Satine. I don't remember the episode names in Clone Wars, but it's the first Mandalore arc when they're going back to Coruscant. And
I'm pretty sure it's called The Duchess of Mandalore.
There you go. And they're, like, on the ship, and he straight up says to her, if you'd asked me, I would have left the Jedi Order. But again, that's not a choice he got to make because she never asked him.
Ooh, that's a great point.
So, like, I don't know. To me, Obi-Wan's life is, like, very much destiny taking control and, like, being like, this is a person that I am going to, like, direct, and that's just the way it is.
Right.
Whereas, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry, we're taking a 5-minute break so I could go scream in a bag about Obi-Teen.
Okay, fair.
And we're back.
The power of editing. But anyway, with Leia, I just feel like she makes the similar choices to Obi-Wan in that she is so self-sacrificing in herself. Mm-hmm. But I feel like she makes those choices from a place of, like, she doesn't have to. She doesn't have to join the rebellion at 16. Her parents don't want her to.
True.
Like, she doesn't have to go in, well, arguable that she doesn't have to go into the Senate. I'll take that one back. But, like...
Yeah, but, like, she could have, like, kept her head down like Kier told her to.
Exactly. Like, she does not have to put herself in danger all these times. There are people who will... Like, she's literally a princess. There are people who will do this for her. Like, she doesn't have to be the incredible charismatic leader in the rebellion that she becomes. She doesn't have to join the government after that. She could have easily said, you know what? I've done my fighting, and now I'm tired. And instead of doing that, she continues to choose to serve for another 30 years and then to start the resistance, which, again, she could have just been like, you know, I don't like what's happening, but it's time for somebody else to take the reins. And to me, she chooses because she knows that she has the ability to solve things, and it's irresponsible of her not to. And so that's, I think I'm explaining my thinking a little better than I did in the first episode, what I feel like the difference is between someone like a Leia in her choices and someone like an Obi-Wan with his destiny.
Right.
See, I don't think I agree. I think that, you know, they are both very self-sacrificing, and, you know, I think they're both making their choices. You know, like you said, Obi-Wan could have fucked off with Satine if she had asked him to. I kind of think, and hopefully I can also articulate this a little better than I did when we first talked about it in the first episode on this. But I think that the external forces that kind of drove their decision making manifested themselves in different ways in each of them. So, Chris, like you said, Obi-Wan very much grew up with the Jedi Order, which is all about structure, and it's more like, this is what you can do, this is what you cannot do. So he kind of internalized that as like a set of hard and fast rules. And Leia, grew up obviously with Bail and Breha, who, brought her up to, think about morality and all this other stuff. And, well, maybe that manifested itself in her as, like, values to live by that she very much, did abide by, as we can see throughout this book and throughout her life.
Mm-hmm.
She's doing something usually because it's the right thing, whether it's morally or otherwise. Obviously, we see in other places she does the right thing despite, some kind of structural power, Mon Mothma, etc., telling her to not do that. So I think that they're both kind of driven to make their choices based on how they were maybe brought up to, think about how they should make their decisions. I don't know if that...
No, that makes sense to me.
Puts a bow on my argument, but...
Yeah, so I'm gonna pretend I'm Kristen and split the difference here. Because I think it's hard...
Burn from all the way across the ocean.
Oh, come on! It's not a burn. I think it's hard to know with people... Well, with Obi-Wan's kind of just gets dragged around, honest to God. But I think it's hard to know with somebody like Leia where, like, her innate sense of values that she was raised with ends and where her feeling like she has to do things begins. Because I think she's raised to just, like, obviously, like, want to help people and be selfless, but, like, how much of that is her, like, being like, this is how I was raised and these are my values and this is what I'm gonna do. And how much of that is, like, I can't do words today. How much of that is, her just kind of like, she started, doing these things out of, her own free will, and then it kind of just snowballs, and it's just like, well, I can't, like, not do these things now. Like, like, it's when, like, I'm thinking about Bloodline, when, when Mon Mothma becomes ill, and there's no driving personality force in the Senate, and she is, chosen by her party to represent them for, like, basically another Supreme Chancellor position. She's kind of just like, I don't want this, but you asked me, so I guess I'll do it. Like, she can't say no. And, like, how much of that is her just being like, okay, fine, and how much of that is her being like, yes, I want this.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. I think... Yeah, that is a good point. I mean, I think, looking at the rest of Bloodline, like, I think that particular one, how she was going to retire and then got dragged into this first senator race, like, that is an argument for that she doesn't have a choice. And then, like, to me, like, at the end, forming the resistance is her, like, making the choice to take things into her own hands. But, like...
I think that's true. Again, it's hard to be like, she knows she's the only person with the, like, political power and personality force, or, the charisma to draw people together like that. So
also at that point, when she is forming the resistance, there's very few people with kind of the institutional knowledge of how to even bring that about. We see even what's his fuck, Casterfo? Like, he is a grown-ass adult person, and he barely remembers the original,
Civil War, right?
Yes, the Galactic Civil War.
Yes.
And it's because he was very young when it happened, but, it's kind of like we see in The Force Awakens, people think that the Jedi are a myth.
Right.
Yeah.
Like,
totally.
collectively the galaxy has forgotten a lot about, you know, how life was before.
Mhm.
And I think part of that, like, what the Empire was actually like, and how the rebels, the original Rebel Alliance, even came to rise up against that. So I
Totally.
think, you know, maybe I can plug my thing on, I think Leia has really internalized a sense of duty. And we can set, you know, whatever it may be too, whether it's based on her morals or the Republic at that point. But, you know, I think she kind of feels like she has to, because there's not a whole lot of other people who even know how.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, building an army from scratch is hard enough. And then add on to that people don't know how to do that except for her, really, at this point. Makes it a little difficult.
Yeah, I think we are. I think the difference between us, between our opinions, is purely. Don't kill me. This isn't on purpose. Purely one of point of view. Because
Chris, get out. That's it. Get out.
Well, no. Let me get there because I'm talking
Must
myself
I?
into you guys are right.
Must I?
Do it.
But because to me, I'm thinking of it as we know that Leia has choices. But what I hear you both saying is that, like, her life experience and the totality of her world and her value system does not allow her to view it as a choice, like not a serious choice.
That is a very good summary of what I've been trying to say. So thank you for
Yes.
making it words better than I could.
Yes.
No,
Also,
no, I'm very happy to, and honestly, I can get on board with that analysis.
Haha, Daniel, Chris is wrong again.
yes!
1 out of 79.
Hey, that ain't half bad.
Aw, friend of the pod. Hi, Daniel. Well then.
The other thing that I want to say you put on here,
Yes.
Kate?
So I wanted to talk a little bit about, like, you know, we've talked a lot about the Force and free will, and does the Force itself have an agenda? You know, on pretty much every single past episode we've ever done. So, I'm just wondering how much we see the Force acting in Leia's life, because we know from the book, at least in this span of months of her life, she feels a connection with the Force one time. Like, actively feels that connection when she's saving Kira when they're swinging across the chasm and this fucking dum-dum didn't tie his rope correctly or whatever the hell. But we also know that behind the scenes, around this time, Yoda and Obi-Wan are discussing which of the twins to train. And Yoda's vote, of course, is Leia, and Obi-Wan's vote is Luke. And we know this from a certain point of view. The story There Is Another, and I can't remember who the author is off the top of my head right now.
And There Is Another.
Yeah.
I want to say it's Gary D. Schmidt.
Okay. Sure.
Keep talking, I'll find it.
Okay. So I don't know. This is not necessarily a question we can answer, and I feel like Leia becomes more Force. Now, maybe not more Force sensitive, but more attuned to her connection with the Force throughout her life as a result of finding out that she's Luke's sibling. But, you know, how does the Force, if at all, factor in to any of this?
I mean, if I were to just kind of speculate, I would say that, you know, I think, at least in the movies, we've seen the Force kind of try to guide people along in their decision-making.
Mm-hmm.
Specifically, I'm thinking about in Empire Strikes Back, you know, with Luke, when he gets a little Force ghost from Obi-Wan that's like, fuck off to Dagobah.
Yes.
And then he hears, you know, he figures out that Leia and Han are in trouble, and Yoda's like, don't fuck off again, and
Yes.
he fucks off to Cloud City. You know, he doesn't have to do that. I don't know if that's the argument I want to make. But, you know, he, by all means, logically should be staying and, like, training in the Force with Yoda and learning how all of that works, but then he gets a little nudge saying that like his friends are in trouble, and so he takes that and goes off to save them. So, I mean, I'm sure I can't think of any specific examples, but I would imagine that the same thing might happen to Leia.
Yeah, that's
if she feels any
I think
pokes in the side from it.
I think that's such a tricky example, though, just because, you know, we also have in the movie Yoda being like, just ignore it. It's totally fine. Sometimes you just don't listen when you have Force visions because reasons. So,
like your dad might try to kill you.
Yes,
Yeah.
correct. Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we've said before in the canon, Leia really only gets Force boops when she or other people are in like grave fucking danger.
Yes, that is all that we have
So far.
seen so far. We have, like you said, with Kier in the chasm. We have in Bloodline with the napkin bombing, and we have obviously The Last Jedi.
Okay. And also, obviously, she has a very strong connection to Luke because Space Twins reasons.
Yes.
Okay, just double checking that because I'm just kind of like, I don't know. Like, again, it goes back to this question of how much I think free will people have, because the Force will give you nudges, but you don't necessarily have to pay attention to it. And I don't necessarily know that we've seen... Have we seen yet people kind of, like, ignoring the Force and then winding up into whatever situation the Force wanted to throw them into anyway?
One might argue Ahsoka.
Is that like Oedipus style?
What do you mean?
Well, wasn't like the whole thing just like the fact that he found out he was gonna, you know, have sex with his mom and like lose his eyeballs, and then he was like, no, I'm not gonna do this, and so he
had sex with
actively
his mom
tried
and
to
lost
not
his
do that.
eyeballs.
Right.
And then he had sex with his mom and lost his eyeballs.
This
So I just wanted to make a nerdy joke there, and it was a perfect moment. So.
that was an excellent... That was great.
That was, I'm sorry I
Full
made you
marks.
explain it.
Full
Thank you
marks.
for bearing with me. This has been classic literature. Classic literature pod.
Full marks from your mom, who's an English nerd, who really wants to get into grad school. Grad school is not listening to this podcast, but please let me into grad school Jesus. Anyways,
While we have a moment, it is Gary D. Schmidt who wrote There Is Another.
thank you. Great.
Wait, so I have a follow-up question about that. So did you say earlier that this was about the time in the canon where they were having that discussion? Am I just...
No, I
might
think
be
that
remem-
happened as Obi-Wan died.
Okay, well, that also was not my guess, so...
What, the discussion of...
In There Is Another, when Yoda and Obi-Wan are talking.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I think so, because
I thought it was like after Obi-Wan died, he just like at some like shows up on Dagobah at some point, like during the timeline of A New Hope, and it's just like, "What up? I'm dead. Can you train this kid for me?"
Yeah, yeah. So, as Obi-Wan dies, give or take an hour.
So, but it's not as he dies. He's not dying when he's just like having this like mental brain cycle, like telekinetic conversation, whatever the fuck.
That's true.
Use your words better, I said, as I don't use my words greatly at all.
Anyway, to get back to the Force. I mean, there's so much we still don't know, and I don't think we'll ever know about the Force. But like, at least I kind of hope we never know it.
I mean,
But-
I mean, half the fun is that it doesn't make. I mean, it makes vaguely some kind of sense, but that we don't know.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, I feel like it is. To me, the Force is more something that has like general wishes and generally likes the light side, but like doesn't take huge, like it's kind of like the watchmaker theory of like, if any of you remember your like high school history, it was like Isaac Newton's like theology theory was that like God is like the watchmaker and that he sets up everything so that the universe can prosper and then
then he
just
fucks
leaves
off.
it alone. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Like I kind of feel like the Force is like that with like a couple nudges here and there.
Mhm.
Like, you know, maybe the events of Rogue One are a nudge or other things like that. But like, so to me, I feel like, you know, maybe the Force puts people, and in this case specifically Leia, in these positions to have these important moments. But like, I don't think the Force has like an all-consuming plan. Like, I think it is up to the Leias and the Obi-Wans and, you know, the Lukes and the characters of the light side to seize the moments that they're given. And like, what the dark side does is that it like tries to like harness the Force and like take it for its own and, you know, just control it more than almost the like going with the flowness of the light.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Is the point of the Force not balance? Or is that just me being brainwashed by the Jedi?
No, the point
No,
of the Force
it's-
is balance. I think what's been in more in flux as we move from like the George Lucas school of / Dave Filoni school of the Force to the Rian Johnson school of the Force is, what does balance mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So does, you know, does balance mean light side only? We have banished all dark side users ever, or does it mean equal amounts of both, or somewhere in between those two? So
Yeah. And that's, and you know, again, I don't think we definitely don't know that now. We'll
Mm-mm.
see if we ever do. Because I mean, you know, just as to expand on what you said very well, like for those who haven't watched the Clone Wars or are less familiar, obviously,
or Rebels, honestly,
or Rebels, but I'm specifically thinking of the Mortis trio,
yeah,
where they're actual physical manifestations of the light side, the dark side, and, you know, the center who, you know, keeps them in balance. And that's like a equal and opposite situation, which is kind of feels weird looking back at original Star Wars, and it like kind of feels like George's vision evolved a little bit there. And then you look at
Yeah.
Rian Johnson and his like, no, like the light side is the way, and like we preserve balance by
the light side
working
being
on the
ascendant.
light side. Exactly.
Yeah. Also, welcome back to Noise Pod. If you hear weird background noises, that's our hamster chewing on wood.
Pork chop. I didn't
He's
Instagram
chopping
today
the
because I
wood.
wanted to take a picture of him with Empire's End for National Love Your Pet Day, and then he was sleeping all afternoon.
Well, you can remedy it later.
I will.
Miranda, you were saying.
Oh, pork chops chopping on his wood.
Mm-hmm.
How many would a pork chop chop?
Well, the answer is a lot. He fucking loves chewing on wood. Just so everybody knows. Noise Pod is also Pork Chop Pod.
Every pod should be pork chop pod.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, does anybody else have anything else to say about the Force before we talk a little bit more about Leia?
The Force is weird.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah. No arguments here.
To the end. All right. This is a little bit tied into what we were talking about in terms of like Leia's choices and such. So I wanted to talk about, you know, obviously we have 16-year-old Leia, who we haven't seen her except for a snippet really in Rebels at this point in her life before. So I just wanted to talk about who she is as a youngin' and how it informs the politician and the grown-up and the resistance leader she becomes in Bloodline.
Yeah. So I think the easiest way, like, without, you know, looking too deep into it, is just that obviously in Bloodline, like, she's seen a lot of shit. She's more mature.
Mm-hmm.
But I think specifically we can see that in kind of her, like, youthful idealism when she's 16 and she finds out that her parents are involved with the rebels, or, like, that they're starting the Rebel Alliance, and she's really into it, and she, like, wants to go out. She wants to help. She wants to go, you know, even outside of that, like, try to do good in the galaxy, taking the refugees in, doing whatever. But she's just very excited all the time, and she's doing it because she wants to be involved. Whereas
Definitely.
later in life, like we were kind of touching on earlier, she's doing it almost because she feels like she has to. You know, she wants to retire from the Senate, and then they nominate her to be the first senator. She wants to fuck off with Han and like explore the galaxy, and then she feels like because the First Order is starting to rise up, she has to start the resistance.
Right.
So I think, you know, as she's grown and matured, she's very much aware of, you know, the consequences of her actions and her decisions, and she knows, you know, kind of the impact that can have not just on her but throughout the galaxy, and she feels obligated to do it, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Another thing that I think is the same that you can really trace a direct line in her character, and one of the reasons, honestly, why I love Claudia Gray's writing of Leia so much, because she gets her exactly right, is that all throughout the original trilogy, we see that Leia loves getting right into the middle of things, like getting her hands dirty, you know, shoving people into a trash compactor, etc., etc. And we see that here. Like, she wants, maybe not to be on the front lines, but she wants to be active. She wants to be doing things. And that's one thing that she says that's in Bloodline that she misses about, you know, being older and being a career politician, is that she doesn't really get to have adventures anymore. And for her, I think the difference between, you know, having adventures with Han versus all the other sorts is that she wants to adventure, like, with a purpose. She wants it to mean, her risk to mean something. And I think we can really, really see that in her younger self. She never loses that wanting to just, like, you know, hop on a speeder in the forests of Endor and murder some motherfuckers.
You know what just made me sad? Completely unrelated to any of this.
Okay.
I just realized we're never going to get Han on Resistance. Remember when we found out that Resistance was about racers and we were all like, obviously they're going to have Han somewhere. Nope.
Oh my god, why would you say that?
Now I'm sad. Now I'm sad.
Why would you say that to me? Why would you say that to me?
Because if I have to suffer, so does everyone else.
Oh my god! I wanted so bad to see the Five Sabers competition.
Yeah.
So bad.
Yeah.
Guess I'll cry. Well, while I cry, you can keep talking about this.
Yep. To me, the biggest, you know, thing that her beginning teaches her the rest of her life is how to deal with loss.
Oh god.
And, like,
Oh,
Fuck you.
rude.
know, obviously, we hear it from Holdo, but, like, she
Rude.
learns
Wow.
from a very young age how to deal with loss, but understand that it was necessary. And, like, Kira's the perfect example of that, because, like, it was literally necessary. Like, it would have been disastrous if Kira had not died. And, like, to me, that is what makes her...
So sad inside now.
I know. Well, that's what makes her such a unique leader, though, because it's, you know, it's very much the storybook, like, is not afraid to lose people, but feels every single one of them. Like, it's like what you want in a leader. Like, and it's that, you know, she gets that here, and that's how she already has it by, that's how she already has it by A New Hope, where she doesn't give up the rebel base, even when her home planet is being threatened, because on some level, you know, even though she tried to fake it, like, on some level, she knows that, honestly, the rebellion's more important.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I mean, we talk a lot, too, about how Leia never really has a chance to mourn in the original trilogy. You know, we see her comforting Luke after Obi-Wan dies, and, you know, the joke is that, like, you lost an old dude who you knew for about 48 hours, and her entire planet blew up. Why is she comforting you?
Yeah.
But also, I mean, I think that, you know, if we want to spin that a little bit more positively, I think that speaks to how strong she is and how used to this sort of shit she is. Like, Luke just is literally fresh off the farm, has never, you know, had a hard day in his life, really, when we think about
Useless
it.
twink.
Yep. Correct.
Useless twink pod.
Oh my god, stop. Jesus Christ. But yeah, no, she's that person who's very familiar with tragedy and personal tragedy and just kind of soldiering on.
Yeah. Very depressing, by the way.
Yeah.
Like, that's terrible. I mean,
Mhm.
obviously, we celebrate her as a very strong character because she is. But, you know, the way that she got there is terrible.
It's horrifying, isn't it? Oh god.
Yeah, I mean, like, Well, no, never mind. I was gonna talk about how sad Leia's life has been, but she found
I think
happiness. She made it work.
I don't want to talk about it.
Yeah.
Not
I
the
think
opposite
we're-
of a hot take, but I'm never not gonna be upset that Carrie died before 9.
Oh,
Great. This is Sadness Pod, actually.
Yeah.
Wow.
This is why I kind of wanted them to recast.
Yeah, well.
I understand why they didn't, and I don't think it was a wrong choice, but
Yeah.
that was just my personal
Yeah,
opinion.
not necessarily. Like, it got people signed off on it who mattered, so.
Exactly.
it's whatever.
Like I
But-
said, not a wrong choice.
Yeah.
Just, this is what I was thinking in my head.
Yeah, I feel like we've
Oh.
talked about this opinion that we have before. If you want more details, I don't know what
Just
the
listen to the previous 78 episodes. You'll find it.
Oh, this is very unrelated, but I just had a thought, and it's very sad to me. But what if they did a flashback of Leia
Yeah.
and had Billy Lord do that shit?
Oh my god, how dare you?
I mean, considering I still can't get
Sorry.
through R2 playing the message in The Last Jedi without crying, I would probably die.
Yeah, that's fair. Sorry for that.
Speaking of crying, can we talk about Bale real quick before we?
Ugh.
Well, okay, I want to talk about Bale as a politician before I talk about him as a parent.
Okay.
Because let's just ease into the pain. So I want to talk briefly about how obviously Bale was a mentor for Leia as a politician. You know, of course, among Mon Mothma and others that she met through her father's work, but he was her first role model, obviously, because he's her fucking dad. So obviously, she gets her moral integrity from him, and that much is clear. She never stops having that, that moral compass that Bale and Bray gave her. But I just wanted to talk about how she is different from him as a politician. I think probably the most obvious example is that Bale's really, really, really reluctant to dive into armed conflict with the Empire. And while Leia doesn't just rush headlong into violence, she sees very easily the necessity of it. And, when she has to start up the resistance, she's like, well, it's time for this. And it's not a whole lot of hemming and hawing she does, really. She's just there is evil here, and it is growing, and it is ginormous, and we have to do something about it.
Yeah, and I think part of that could be because, they obviously both had experience with war in their youth. Obviously, we see Leia fighting the good fight in the Civil War, but, Bale lived through the Clone Wars. He was a senator. He saw it all. And I think possibly the big difference there is that things were not okay after the Clone Wars.
Yeah.
Neither of the sides really won. It was just
Right.
Palpatine. And so everything went to shit, and fighting for the Republic didn't really seem like it was maybe worth it anymore. Whereas after the Civil War, things were not great. Obviously, they had a really hard time starting up the New Republic and kind of wrangling all the different systems in. And, even after Endor, the war lasted a little longer. But I think the outcome of that was more or less good for Leia than it was for Bale after the Clone
Yeah.
Wars. And so she saw war as something that could, obviously terrible, but be a means to a more positive end.
Yes.
Whereas that was definitely not the case for Bale.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah, I had a whole metaphor lined up, and then you just completely talked me out of it. And so now I want to build on yours because I think yours
Yay.
is better.
I love when this happens.
Thanks,
So
Dad.
to yes and Miranda, Bale knows what it's like to lose a war. Because obviously the fighting in the Clone Wars sucked and the Republic ostensibly won, but everything Bale was rooting for and fighting for lost.
Yeah.
The Jedi lost, the Republic died, one of his two best friends died in Padme.
Oh, God.
Rude.
Yeah.
And so he knows what it's like to lose. And so I feel like one of the things with Leia is Leia doesn't actually know what it's like to lose.
Sure. I mean, she knows what losses are, obviously, because they didn't win every single battle.
Yeah,
but-
she knows what losses are, but not on a galactic war scale.
Right.
Like
it's on the battle scale, not on the war scale.
exactly. And that's like who does at the end? Like who knows what it's like to lose at the end of the day? Like that's not something.
Not the youngins.
Yeah, that's not something that, you know, the mind is meant to comprehend. And so like I feel like that's part of it, and that's part of Leia's we will do this because we have to and we will win because that's the only option attitude comes from. But like you see Mon Mothma too, looking back at her story and from a certain point of view, Contingency Plan by Alexander Freed. Like she knows what it's like to lose too.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why she's like, you know what? We can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
Like, because it can get worse. And I feel like Bail is very afraid of losing after the Clone Wars and after the rise of the Empire.
And of course, he has so much more to lose now.
He does, and arguably the galaxy does too.
Mhm.
Although, arguably, shouldn't have said arguably before because I'm going to say it now. Arguably they didn't because they all came around to the opinion that it was better to go out, you know, in flames than it was to stay under Palpatine.
Ugh. I have a lot of feelings now.
Yeah. I feel like Bail was kind of like, I'll go back to my original metaphor because I found a way to tie them in. Like, you know, like whenever people are like, I don't know, is something white? It's like a white people idiom, but like the frog who's dropped into boiling water and immediately hops out versus the frog that starts in cold water and then it like slowly gets heated up and it doesn't notice. Like, I feel like to a certain extent, Bail in, you know, the 15 years between Attack of the Clones, between Revenge of the Sith and, let's say, a year before this book starts, is that frog where he, like, you know, is fighting to make things better, but doesn't want it to be armed conflict, doesn't want anybody to get hurt, because his view is, we need to do this so that it doesn't get worse.
Right. I mean, as is noted in the book, his whole thing is just like, what am I willing to risk? I'm also, you know, partially in charge of an entire fucking planet.
Mhm.
Like, do I risk literally everything and stuff that he doesn't even necessarily have ownership of, you know?
Yeah. And we've talked about this before too, in the parallels to real life of, you know, how white people feel about politics versus how people of color feel about politics. And like there's the view that it can always get worse, which is what Bail has early on and what often white people do. And then there's the view, which Bail comes around to, which Leia has, and that people, like the truth that people of color know, where it is already as bad as it can get. And like, I feel like Leia's awareness of politics, she was only ever dropped into the boiling water and forced to stay there. And so she is like, you know, her whole life is hashtag this is not normal. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like, so I feel like...
And we know that she was raised that way because she was always been very aware of what is actually happening and how absolutely fucked everything is.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So that's the difference between, you know, that I see between them. And obviously Bail comes around and Breya helps bring him around, and they both realize that war is necessary, but that's kind of my view of how they get there in different paths.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So to continue Depression Pod.
Yeah, right? Jesus.
Expanding a little bit, talk about both Bail and Breya. So obviously we haven't had a lot of content with the both of them, and especially Breya shows up for like 0.5 seconds, like to be like, oh look, a baby, end of movie. But I've always been wanting more Bail and Breya stories, but I think I didn't realize how hungry I was for that until I read this book, because now I'm like, oh, it just opens up this entire world of like, you know, their pasts and what's, obviously this book is from Leia's point of view, so we don't really have a full picture of what's been going on behind the scenes for clearly far longer than Leia is aware of. Like, I don't
Mhm.
think she's even fully aware of, like, how long the rebellion has been brewing between the two of them and their co-conspirators. But yeah, this is the first time we're really seeing them, and obviously, like, we knew they were good people, because how could they raise a person like Leia and not be good people? But it was really also refreshing for me to see them be, like, real people. And Claudia Gray is also so great at this. You know,
Yeah.
they're a married couple. They love each other a lot, but they've been married for a long time. And, you know, we... Chris and I talk a lot on this podcast about our marriage, honestly. But, like, Chris and I have been together for a really long time. Not as long as these two, but we've been together for a fair amount of time. And there's, you know, that saying that at the beginning of the relationship, there's a whole lot of passion, and then it grows into something more, you know, that plus companionship or whatever it is. And, you know, I feel like a lot of younger people are always just like, oh, but that seems so boring, and you're old people now and stuff like that. But we see exactly how much that really works, not only in this book, but I feel like in real life. Like, I feel like we know that firsthand. Not everything is perfect, even after decades of marriage. Like, they have arguments, they fight, they annoy each other, but they make it work. And they not only make it work for themselves, so they make it work for their daughter, and they make it work for their entire fucking planet. And that was just, like, a nice, like, super realistic thing to be seeing, I feel like.
It was nice to see Bale get mad, to build on what you were saying. Like, it's, you know, it's nice that they're just not perfectly composed all the time. Like, it's nice to see Bale lose control and, like, just, like, feel the entire weight of what is pushing on him and what is pushing on his daughter, and lose it.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool, the end.
Sorry.
No, I'm kidding.
So I'm not married. But, like...
Big if true.
Okay, rude.
Wow, what a shithead.
Fuck, Chris. I'm fucking delightful. No, but so, you know, Kate, like you were saying, we do see them fight in this book. We see them piss each other off. But what's really refreshing and also, like, good for the galaxy ultimately is that, you know, despite the fact that they're, you know, not always seeing eye to eye, they do have the same end goals in mind. Like, they're pushing towards the same thing. They want to raise their daughter well. They want to topple the Empire. You know, you can see, like, that they still very much are a team, even if there is conflict.
Definitely. Yeah, I feel like, you know, if you want to take relationship lessons from this book, you know, they definitely have the same values, absolutely. Like, and that's, like, you know, the core of them as individuals and with each other, like, as you were saying.
Yeah, it's a partnership, is what it is.
Exactly.
Like, it's
like, Bray is queen, but, you know, she's not just, like, I don't know, being a fucking dictator or whatever.
I mean, she jokes to Leia when, like, Leia hates doing math. She's like, "Oh, just find yourself a viceroy who's good at math." Like,
Which is the cutest thing.
like, and
it's
like,
adorable.
It is adorable, and it's a joke, but it's also like, you find someone who, oh Jesus, I'm gonna punch myself in the face, but like, to be like really, like, pain in the ass memey about it. You find someone who completes you and who can do the things you can't do, and, like, have this partnership, and, like, I feel like that's super real. Like, when you look at, like, successful marriages, like, you know, it's really hard to think of successful marriages in America right now. But, like, think of something like the Obamas, because we all love the Obamas.
Yes, that's
And if
right.
you don't, then get the fuck out.
I know.
But, like, and you see Barack and Michelle, and it's very clear that that is a marriage where he is, or was, president of the United States, the most powerful man in the world. And there's not a goddamn question in anyone's mind when he sets foot in the door to go home, they are on equal footing.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And, like, I feel like that's what it is with Bale and Brea, too.
Absolutely. And it's abundantly clear with the Obamas as well that, you know, they've put work into their marriage. You know, this is an ongoing process, and it's not necessarily easy, but you do it because you love each other.
Exactly. And then, you know, Bale and Brea, too.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That line, since you mentioned it about the doing math, made me giggle because Chris is the one who fucking reconciles all of our bank accounts at the end of the month because I can't fucking count.
Asians who can't do math.
Yes, that's me.
Our favorite Cards Against Humanity card.
So now I'm just internally giggling. It's fine. We're really gross sometimes.
Occasionally.
Occasionally I like you instead of just roasting you on Twitter publicly in front of hundreds of people.
Yeah, 1 out of 79 episodes.
Dozens.
Anyway.
And that's a wrap on episode 79 of Book Wars Pod. That is part 1 of our wrap up. Part 2 will be dropping next week. Be sure to check us out on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Tumblr. You can also find us via email at bookwarspod@gmail.com. Please do rate, review, and subscribe if you enjoy the show. Book Wars Pod on all the things. You can also, if you wish, and we would encourage you, check out the rest of the Tashi Station radio podcasts. That is our parent network. You can also find the mega feed, which is just all of the network podcasts in one spot. So rate and review that as well if you're in the mood to do so. And if you can, please donate to the Tashi Station Radio Patreon. That helps us cover production and hosting for this show and all of the shows on the Tashi Station Radio Network. If you'd like to support us directly, you can do so at Ko-fi. You can give us coffee. I'm not doing this again. You can give us coffee at ko-fi.com/bookwarspod. We are 60% of the way there to our Star Wars Celebration Chicago goal. So, if you've listened to the show before, if you donate coffee to the pod, we will put up pictures of the official hamster of the pod, Pork Chop. And those are really cute, and I encourage you, if you have the means to do so, to donate coffee so everyone can benefit from the pork chop pics. Our theme song is Whiz Bang by Poddington Bear. Our logo and artwork are by Joe Butera Design. I'm Kristen for Chris, Kate, and Miranda, and we'll talk to you next week.